Hello, everyone. How's it going? Happy Monday. Monday before Thanksgiving. I know the last live stream I did got a little off topic. We talked about food a lot, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this week. Good food. I'm smoking a turkey. I got mashed potatoes getting ready to go. Yeah, it's going to be a good week. Cecily, I love you getting in with the right out of the bat question. And I'll answer it. And I'm going to kind of tie it into some of the stuff that I found out this week doing some testing. So I mentioned, obviously, on the title, I finally got to test a violet color as a gamut extender. And I'm going to get into like some of the nitty gritty, like behavior of ink and stuff like that. I actually learned a lot this week doing some of that testing. So yeah, I'm going to share some of that stuff. So, aren't we all? Carl, what's happening? Jonathan, good morning to you. You're morning still because you're California. All right. So, yeah, this last week, because I wasn't live streaming, I had the opportunity to go test some new inks. So there's a dealer that we're still finalizing some stuff. I was helping them get an extended gamut color. I'm helping them get an extended gamut color system ready for Long Beach. And so we were testing with their ink supplier some different pigments. One bummer, we didn't have any fluorescence there. They weren't quite ready with their fluorescence, but we were able to test their orange, green, and violet. And that was one of the big ones I really wanted to test. I wanted to see what was violet going to do to the gamut overall. Was it going to benefit it a ton? Was it going to benefit enough to lose one of the other colors, like one of the fluorescents? Because I've already kind of know that orange and green are definitely the strongest factors in extending the gamut, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. But so I did definitely not removing orange or green. But violet kind of fills the extra gap. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's pop over here to my PC. And let me... Uno momento. Okay. So, sorry, my computer's loading. Here we go. Let's go big on this. So what you guys are seeing here is the individual ink colors that I tested. Now, like I said, I didn't have a fluorescence, so I'm actually only testing 7 ink colors: cyan, magenta, yellow, black, green, orange, and violet. And if I turn this around, I'll explain what you're looking at here in a second. This grid is kind of the lab color space. So you have light to dark right here, and then these axes, whatever. This direction is yellow to blue. This direction is red to green. So a color wheel would be this view you're seeing right here. And this manufacturer of ink did a phenomenal job hitting in between everything. So their yellow and their cyan, their green is like right in the middle of it. Their orange is right in between the yellow and the magenta. And the violet that they gave us was just right in between them, which was awesome. So this shows you just the individual ink colors. And this is technically like 5%, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, all the way up to 100% of these individual colors. Now, one interesting thing we found out testing this violet is initially this arm here for the violet was turning and going back toward black. Now, you'll see a lot of these turn toward the bottom a little bit. They're, in this case, hue shifting, but the violet was actually going back toward black. And that, I think, has to do with the pigment. I'll get into a little bit of ink formulation discussion right now, but what dictates the hue of the ink that you're using is the pigments that they're using. And some pigments are a single pigment ink. Some inks are a multi-pigment ink, meaning they're using multiple pigments to create that specific hue. And in this case, whatever they're doing with the violet was actually sending it back toward black. So I ink reduced this violet a ton to get it to not go toward black. And funny thing is I was actually, I'll cover this in a second, realizing that as these other colors are shifting, it throws off some of our darker colors. So I was actually playing around with some ink limiting to actually get a little bit better performance. It was kind of a weird side thing that I picked up. So let me show you kind of, it's ugly as sin. Well, it's not perfect. It's not pretty, but normally, and I'm going to bring in a normal. Let's go. I'm going to pull in the ICC profile from my Prestige. I'm going to pull in one of the ones that you get from DTF Station. And this is not a criticism of it. It's just we've talked before about the limitations with CMYK. And I'm going to show you on the screen the limitations of CMYK. Let's go. Let's do production. Let's go with this one. There we go. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the oh, it flipped upside down. What the heck? There we go. Actually, Color Prime performs really quite well. It's kind of shocking. This is probably not the best example because I know it's a very different. You know what? Let's do this. I'm going to not use a completely different ink set. I'm going to use just I'm going to use a CMYK version of that same ink manufacturer. So let me go back here real quick. If nothing else, it's proving the quality of Color Prime ink, which I've talked about before many times. Where did it go? There we go. I have so many things on here. Goodness gracious. All right, let's see. I think this was it. And if you're reading into it, you can kind of tell what I was working with. Okay. So the grayish areas you're seeing are the CMYK gamut, and the color stuff that you're seeing is the extended gamut. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to show you what happens when I turn off the extended colors. Look at that gray. Look how much smaller it is. Now it's kind of a little bit of an ugly profile, but just gives you an idea of what you're looking at. So look how much bigger it is. And that violet extends it a ton. So the violet was doing a lot of work. However, I'm going to show you guys something. I'm going to show you a fluorescent, a printer that has fluorescent colors included in it. So let's go back here. Color, hi-fi. I know this one works, I believe. Yeah, it's got DuPont. Look at how much brighter the gamut is. And this is why I love the fluorescent as extenders, because all that gray or that lighter color is all the stuff that I can hit with fluorescence. Now, look, we definitely are missing this violet end of it here, but that's a fairly small section of it compared to what we lose utilizing the fluorescent magenta and cyan. Look at all that, like all those brighter colors. And if I click over here, this is Inkbank or DuPont CMYK and Inkbank fluorescence. And you can see the little arms of the fluorescent that are being utilized. So it's this yellow here and this magenta here. And those two little arms, because they are brighter, give us that dramatic benefit in the brightness factor. Like I said, definitely way more going on back here on the violet because we added the violet to the mix. So does violet add to the gamut? It absolutely does. But because we are limited on 8 colors, you would have to remove one of the magentas or one of the fluorescents to make room for it. And I just think you lose so much because of it from a brightness standpoint, that for most of you all, if you're thinking about going extended colors, this is still the proof that the fluorescents are a better option to add. Now, I will say there is a use case where violet is the better option. And in that case, I would go violet and fluorescent yellow, because fluorescent yellow is adding all of this stuff here, and fluorescent yellow is adding a lot of this stuff here. I think the fluorescent magenta is kind of pulling its weight around this side of the gamut on the top side. But the fluorescent yellow is doing a lot of the work out here. So I think of the two fluorescents, the fluorescent yellow is pulling its weight a little bit more than the fluorescent magenta is. Now, if you are a shop that does a lot of spot colors, a lot of Pantone matches, I think the violet is actually probably going to help you out more, especially when it comes to some of those darker colors where you're trying to mix some of those deeper hues. Obviously, brighter colors are going to perform better with the fluorescent gamut extenders. But when it comes to some of the deeper colors, you're probably going to benefit from the violet versus the fluorescents. When we were looking at those arms, I started playing around with pulling back some of the ink levels or ink limits, and I meant to get it out first. Give me a second. I forgot to get out this graphic. I kind of went down a rabbit hole because I've not had the opportunity, since I've expanded my knowledge a bit more, like when I did the G7 certification and some other things that I've picked up in the last a lot of things I've picked up in the last 6 or 7 months. I've picked up a lot of new skill sets, and I've not had the opportunity to really dial in, like spend the time redoing a profile over and over and over to get it better, to like iterate it to get it better. Most of the time I'm going to shop, I'm making a profile, I check it against the specification, I say, yeah, that's good, we're good to go. When you have the ability and the time, which is why I encourage people to profile themselves, because then they can play with it, you find that you can sometimes get a better result by kind of tweaking little values. And I had never mind, I don't have the graphic. I thought I had it here. I had a couple test charts. But I did one of the profiles. I slammed the ink limits way down in Neo Stampa. Now, I haven't had a chance to play with it in depth using the i1 Profiler or Digital Factory, and those behave very differently. Digital Factory behaves very differently. And you can't use the i1 Profiler software with Neo Stampa because Neo Stampa uses an RGB ICC profile, just because they do. They're special. But I went from I halved the ink limit, basically halved how much ink it was trying to use, and it still produced really good color. Now, part of that's because Neo Stampa does a lot of automated stuff where I can screw it up and it doesn't actually mess it up too much. But what I was finding and what I was playing with was the idea that when these colors kind of see how they hue shift a little bit, And so as you're using more and more of them, they're changing from a magenta more to like a red, or this cyan is changing from a cyan more to a blue. So I did a couple tests where I was trying to stop it from making this turn, and basically I was getting a little bit better results from it. Now I'm going to test a little bit more. I just loaded up the new Color Prime Chroma ink into my printer before I left. So I'm planning to spend this week building some new profiles and testing the new ink versus their old ink. But this, oh sweet, I do have it pulled up. Awesome. This, and we're going to ignore a little bit some of the ugliness in this gamut. I will be the first to admit it's not the prettiest gamut in the world. But this was the CMYK with kind of the normal ink settings that I would use. This was me turning the ink limits way down, like ridiculously down. And you'll see there's some areas where we're definitely getting more, like right here in this brightness area, we're getting more in this yellow from the original ink limits. But if you notice, like I'm getting a look at the violet performance there. And I'm wondering if because these ink colors kind of turn a little bit, I'm wondering if I limit the hue shift that's happening in those deeper version or the higher ink usage, I'm wondering if that's going to shift things back a little bit. So every time I think I've really got a good handle on ICCs, I learn something new that makes me question or wonder if I can maybe make a small tweak. And that's what ICC, like building your own profiles, is. It's making small tweaks to get a little bit better result, which is why you've got guys that are out there. A couple just off the top of my head, Mike Hill, he's on a lot of Facebook groups, Dennis Moon, his crew. The reason they can get some really, really kind of crazy performance out of their CMYK setups is because they are doing that like iterative tweaking, trying to get a little bit more performance out of every area of that gamut. And it's great for their one-off machines or their machines that are in their shop. But if it's not being profiled on the machine that's going to be used on, it's always going to be a little bit limited, which is why I think that like I'm still a big proponent of people learning how to profile themselves, because they're going to build out that skill set from that skill set of building the ICC profile and then iterating to create a better and better ICC. And it's not that the ICC that like you build out just from the get-go isn't good. Like I said, my first and most of the profiles I build for shops are really good right from the get-go. But it could be better. I mean, anything you tweak with, you soup up, you make your adjustments, can always be better. Let me pull up. Okay, you got lots of people. Kevin, what's happening? Coleman. Now you just need to learn how. Yeah. So you're using i1 Profiler, I believe. Or did you get the profiling add-on? I think you did. I can't remember. But again, what I was testing with was with Neo Stampa, and it was I don't want to say it's not going to work the same with Digital Factory, but I haven't played with it enough with Digital Factory, and I'm also kind of waiting on the new release because there's supposed to be some new features in Digital Factory 12. But my rep has not gotten me a beta yet of Digital Factory 12. So waiting on that beta. Frank, what's happening? Yes, indeed. Happy Thanksgiving week. And Ethan, what's happening, friend? Yeah, I want profile and the add-on. Yeah. And I kind of go back and forth which one is the ultimate better solution, because I've profiled with both. But I'm going to pull up here for you guys. This is Copra, and it's a way that I analyze and look at different gamuts that I'm working with. And Cecily asked early on, and I'm sorry it's taking me so long to get to your question, Cecily, of which is the best ink out there. Let me show you a couple things. So what I've got here, it's a similar kind of layout with Neo Stampa, but this lets me swap things in and out a little bit quicker. But let's compare the color prime. Let's do this. Color prime. Make that profile 1. There we go. Okay, so let's do color prime versus Mamaki, the TXF 300. So right now, my whole gamut, everything I'm looking at is the color prime. And this is the original color prime, not the color prime chroma. Okay, so here's your performance difference, sort of. So the Mamaki ink has a little bit better brightness performance in the like reds and yellows. However, look at that green performance. How much better the color prime is on green. And that's a mixture of your cyan and your yellow. And then in this particular profile, we're getting a little bit better blues and purples, like violets, from the Mamaki. But if you think about what's the number one biggest pain in the butt color on those Mamakis to hit, it's like that teal, which is in this area, which is what's Oh, wait, you guys can't see this. Why is this not updating? I'm sorry, everyone. Let me find out why the screen is not updating. I'm sitting here talking about it like you guys can see it, and you can't see it. There we go. Sorry, friends. There it is. All right. And Cecily, no, I'll get to some other stuff here in a second, but I was just using this as an example because I know that Mamaki struggle with cyan colors and teals and stuff like that. And they actually do a pretty good job with reds, which is why I wanted to show this particular comparison. And then you can see over here, yeah, just so much more gamut options in that green, teal, turquoise kind of area. And in the brighter pinks and stuff like that, again, that's another area that the Mamaki struggle a little bit, is in those brighter pinks. And you can see right there, just better performance overall. Let's compare. Let's see if I have an old. Let's see what I got here for. Help if I name these things a little bit better. Let's go here. Just to show you what happens. So color prime is our gray. And if I go to a DuPont Ink Bank Hi-Fi setup, look how much that green changes. Like how much bigger this gamut is with the extended colors. Now, like I said, I know that the guys that can tweak it can get a gamut size in the 500,000-600,000 with CMYK. And just to give you guys an idea, the color prime profile, that's a default color prime. That's not mine. That's the one that comes with your system. It's 402,000 for the gamut size. The extended color, 623. So that gives you an idea of like how much performance you get out of those extra colors. So look at that. It's just massive. The orange and green perform and do a lot. And if we look at, let me look at this angle here real quick. Let's turn off. Yeah, look at all that's not missing, but what the fluorescents add here and here is huge. This is why I'm such a big proponent of that particular extended gamut setup. Now let's compare the Color Prime default versus the Color Prime that I built the other day. Let me see. What did I call it? I called it OG Color Prime or something like that. There we go. And let's turn it on. So I'm getting a little bit better performance in some areas, but not in others. Yeah. So looks like a little bit better color. Now, knowing what I learned the other day, I think I might be able to get a little better performance out of this particular profile I built. But I just want to show you how a profile I built compares to the kind of a default one. And like I said, I think this down here being maybe not as big, it has a lot to do with that hue shifting that the ink's kind of doing. But let's compare a couple of extendeds. So just to show you guys the, let's see, updated. So this is the red, green, violet I tested. So, and then this, let's pull up, let's do the hi-fi color, which is the DuPont and the Ink Bank. So you can see there's a lot better performance here in those darker violets, but turn off. We lose all that brightness. Like, look at those bright oranges and stuff like that. You'll never hit those without utilizing some fluorescence. So, and the green, this green, like, I really like DuPont's green a lot. I would love to see Color Prime with the way they produce their green with just cyan and magenta, or sorry, yellow and cyan. I would love to see how it would perform with fluorescent extenders. They do, yeah, look at that. Look at that difference. And again, a lot of that performance is coming from those fluorescents. Robin, hello. I'm glad you caught us live. Up there in chilly Calgary, I did all this testing in Minnesota. And I gotta tell you what, that sun's setting at like 4:45. That's not fun. I'm not a fan. Not a fan. I didn't mind the cold. I actually kind of really enjoy chillier weather. I know I'm in Arizona, crazy, but man, it's got to be super dark up there in Calgary and really cold. Goodness gracious. So, my opinion on inks, my two favorites at this point. Now that might change. There's multiple ink companies I'm actually doing some testing with, so might change my opinion a little bit. But currently, the Color Prime is probably my favorite overall. The CMYK DuPont, I absolutely adore. I love their CMYK. I've heard some reports on their white not being as opaque as some of the other ones, but I still love their colors. And Ink Bank I like because they have fluorescent colors, and it's a color. The fluorescents don't fade. A lot of fluorescent colors from other manufacturers do fade fairly quickly. Sometimes they fade before they get out of the dryer. So, and my everything that Color Prime is saying about their new Chroma line, it's saying it's going to be way better. And obviously I'm getting ready to do that testing. So I'll have an idea of what that looks like here in the next week or so. But those are kind of my main go-tos for ink that are currently on the market right now is DuPont, Color Prime, DuPont, and Ink Bank in that order. Now, obviously, if you're doing extended colors, Color Prime does have extendeds, but it's red, blue, green, and orange. And we all know how I feel about red and blue. Speaking of which, We should do that. We should look at the red and blue. And I think I've shown you guys this before, but I want to give me 1 second to see if I can pull up a comparison of the red and blue, because I'm pretty sure I have a profile that was built with red and blue. Let's see. Yes, Prestige XL3. Sweet. Okay. So, whoopsies, it got flipped upside down again. I don't know why it keeps flipping upside down on me. All right. So, body. Yeah. So, this is what you're seeing here. The grayish areas are the profile with red and blue. So, orange, green, red, and blue. And you've got definitely some good performance on here. However, I would say this performance is likely because of the color prime yellow and cyan. They make a really nice green together. So I would assume the green is also fabulous. And you've got a little bit better performance here in the red. But I'm learning some stuff. I think I could probably even get this profile to look even better. But let's go to the tail of the tape. Is that what you say? Let me turn off. Yeah, look at that. You're losing all of that brightness. And that is what I love about the fluorescent extenders, is it just makes everything brighter. So your reproduction. So this is why I say, like, if you're doing spot colors and stuff like that and Pantones, you might benefit more from like a violet with a fluorescent yellow combo. But if you are just ripping gang sheets and you are just trying to print out good quality gang sheets for people loading their files or images up on your gang sheet builder, if that's what you're doing, you need to the more closely it looks like an RGB, like the screen you're looking at me on right now, the more closely we can get to that, the better people are going to respond. And obviously, when you talk about having fluorescence, people think you're just doing fluorescence or something like that. And I even have this argument all the time with traditional print people. It's like, well, is it going to look weird? No, it doesn't look weird. When I print a normal image like my picture or something like that, it's going to look totally normal because we built the ICC with it. And when you print brighter colors, they're going to be brighter because the fluorescent is integrated in with it. And then if you want to create some spot colors that are outside of maybe a kind of a lab gamut, you can do that with spot colors. So it was lovely to have some test data to say the combo I've been recommending is still what I would recommend. But it was nice to see what the violet did. And I also learned a lot about behaviors of ink because I was testing with that violet and it behaved so differently. I had to like control it. And so the ability to control it a little bit more was super, super helpful. So I learned so much from just literally playing this week. And I'm probably going to learn more this coming week as I play with CMYK. And Carl, to answer your question, or sorry, Coleman, to answer your question, I'm building to test this new Chroma ink. I'm building profiles in NeoStampa Digital Factory and with i1 Profiler. So I will have some other indications of what's kind of going on there. But let's hit up a couple questions. And so Coleman, I have some live streams where I've profiled, but I don't have any like specific content for it yet. Mostly because it's really nuanced and it's hard to kind of put that kind of stuff together into a class of sorts. I'm working on some stuff. I've got the NeoStampa course recorded, but it's just for like running Neostampa. It's not for the profiling piece of it. And I get very different, like the way that Neostampa says to build profiles is different from the way like G7 folks would build profiles or standard color profilers would build stuff. Like they want me to use D65, and every color profiler out there is using D50 for the most part. They want me to use a perceptual rendering intent, which in Neostampa is a relative colorimetric, but slightly different. One thing I ran into is when I used, you guys probably won't be able to see it on this camera because it's probably not that nuanced. But when I was using the perceptual, my grays were all hue shifting ever so slightly to the magenta side of things. But when I used relative colorimetric, my grays were bang on neutral, like perfect. So there's definitely some nuance in there, and it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to achieve accuracy, I still think relative colorimetric, some of the other things we've discussed on the channel are the better way to go. But there's also some like performance things that you can get, because sometimes, especially as DTF printers, you maybe don't want accurate. You want the most vibrant, the most crazy, the most saturated, with a secondary of being pretty accurate. So I think it depends on what you want and what you're looking for. Yeah, I think Coleman has enough information to get started, but not enough to really start tweaking. So what you can do as you're playing with profiles is adjusting your ink limits. And Digital Factory is a little quirky on the ink limits because it wants to do ink limits as a whole, not like individual channels. And sometimes when you ink limit, you get a lot of graininess. And that's the thing that I haven't figured out, the balance of the whole like dot size graininess test versus an ink limiting. That's the thing I need to kind of play with and figure out from that standpoint. And working with the i1 Profiler software, you're not really doing any kind of ink limiting in there. You kind of want to leave that limiting happening in Digital Factory as far as I can figure. There is an ink limiting function in i1 Profiler, but I don't know that I would necessarily utilize that. Yeah. Carl, I'm in Flexi playing around with ICC linearization part. My lines look like I'm dodging potholes, but I can see the problem on swatches before I scan. Yeah, so I would, if your linearization printout looks like trash, I would say there's something wrong with the film or the printer as a whole. And I think you and I were going back and forth on a YouTube comment about ink lines. I have another shop that I was working with that had a lot of trouble with cyan starvation. And their cyan just never looked right. It looked kind of warbly. And he tried swapping out his ink lines. Like he swapped out all of the ink lines, all the CMYK, because they were a narrower internal dimension. So I think he went from 2 millimeter to 3 millimeter internal diameter. Internal diameter for his CMYK lines from 2 to 3, and zero problems with ink starvation now. Zero. And I've played with machines that had those smaller dimension or in diameter ink lines. I was never a fan of them, but that totally makes sense because the ink starvation is all about ink flow. And if you're not moving ink fast enough through those lines, it's going to be limiting it. So if you have a lot of problems and you have the opportunity or the ability to swap out those ink lines, I might try that. All right. Ms. Beanie, do I have a profile available for us to try and... I mean, I have some profiles, but these profiles I have will do nothing for you. Here's why I say this. If you are having trouble with your grays not graying, it is mostly a linearization problem. And I say that because when you build a profile, And I'm actually I'm going to back up here and show you. When you build a profile, oftentimes your linearization may look something like this. Basically, what this is saying is like this printer, when it called for 30% cyan, it was giving it close to 95% cyan. Now, this is a little dramatic, but if your printer deviates even 2% from the profile that was built, your grays are not going to be neutral. Because if one of the colors is outputting a little bit more, it's going to all of a sudden throw your gray, like let's say it's cyan, your grays are going to be looking a little cyany or a little blue. If you have a little bit of bumped up magenta in one particular area, and it doesn't have to be across the whole thing. It could be just one, like from 30 to 40% when it's calling out that percentage of ink to be used. If yours is 2% off from the linearization of the profile that was built, your grays are going to come out hue shifted a little bit magenta. And this is why I say those profiles that come baked into Digital Factory or that people share, those might be okay, but we don't know what the linearization was. We might be able to look at the linearization, but the linearization is likely not going to be the same as your printer. So although some other colors will perform pretty well, the minute you go to grays, they're going to be off. And so this is why like non-bespoke, non-custom profiles don't perform quite as well. They work okay. You can get them to look halfway decent sometimes, but what you're chasing is the fact that the two machines are not calibrated or linearized exactly the same. And if they're not linearized exactly the same, it's going to throw your results off. It's also the reason why like an ICC profile only really works if the original machine that they built that ICC profile off of had a perfect linearization. Like it was perfect. And then you get your linearization perfect, and then that ICC profile works. But if that ICC profile was built with a bad or a mediocre linearization, even if your linearization is right, it's never going to be accurate. It's herein lies the problem with a lot of these setups. And that's why the Mamakis generally performed a little bit better out of the box. It's the reason why the Epsons perform really well out of the box. The Rollins is because their system is more stable. And from machine to machine, the linearization is a lot closer. Same thing here. Their linearization tends to be a lot closer. The rest of the stuff rebadged from China, linearization is all over the map. All right, Coleman, stupid question alert. I doubt it's going to be stupid. If I'm building a profile on a profiler, do I get the profile? How do I get the profile into Digital Factory? Oh, I didn't show you that. My apologies. So you can actually build linearization in i1 Profiler. You can also build it in Digital Factory. I kind of like the linearization i1 Profiler better, but the only way to get that linearization in to Digital Factory is to bake it into the ICC profile. But the way that you get your profile in, let's hop over. Let's hop over onto my PC. Let me close out of a couple of these things. Exit. No, don't save. Exit. No, don't save. Exit. No, don't save. So when you, let me turn off that real quick. When you have your ICCs that you've built in i1 Profiler and you have Digital Factory, let me open those up. I wasn't planning on using those two. Where do I research how to fix it? You mean your gray is not graying? The only way you can fix it, Robin, is to profile your machine. either build the profile yourself or hire someone to come do it for you. That's really the only way to get those grays to be better. I wish there was a workaround. There just isn't. So you are kind of stuck with the best option you've got. Yeah, there's really no nice way or workaround for that. So, all right, Coleman, I can't remember what printers you have, but regardless, you in I1 Profiler still loading. Basically, if you've got your linearization done in, if you have your linearization done in Digital Factory, you would just simply go to Manage Print Modes. You would go to your file that says calibration on it. Let's see. Let's go down here. This is what would have created my calibration. So I've got my ICC calibration here. Oh, that's right. Rotor and Mongoose and Mamaki. I try to keep track of y'all's printers, but sometimes I forget. I was pretty sure you had all those. So if you've done this linearization piece and then you printed using this print mode that just has the linearization and no ICCs on it, then what you would do is you would come in. Let's see if it loaded in I1 Profiler. My I1 Profiler is running really slow right now on my computer. I don't know what the deal is. You've got all your ICCs. If you right click on it and say open containing folder, it'll show you where those ICCs are. And you can either move them to a more easy to find location, or you can copy the path. Control C. Go into Digital Factory, turn on, and then your output profile. You would want to select from printer profile. You would want to paste. There it is. Roadrunner matched, whatever it happens to be. And then that's going to load that ICC into your print mode. And then you would hit save. I'm going to not, because I don't want to oversave over that. But I hope that makes sense. If you want to, Coleman, we can hop on a call and go over that if you need more help. But that's probably kind of the best way to do it. Again, I think the linearization, I like it a little bit better in I1 Profiler, but there's no way to bake that into or add that into CADLink Digital Factory outside of having it baked into the ICC. If you're in I1 Profiler and you do want to use their linearization, you basically save your linearization and then you put it in here and it bakes that linearization into that ICC profile. So it basically calculates the ICC profile table with your machine's specific linearization. Problem with that is you can't interchange that ICC, but most of the time ICCs don't work well interchanging, like going from one to another. They don't work great. I tend to find I get better results when I just linearize and build a bespoke profile for that machine. Every once in a while I get lucky and I can just throw the ICC on it and it works, but that's me getting lucky. That's more often than not, because if I had a week on one machine, yeah, I could probably get the linearization just literally chef's kiss perfection. So Robin, I do come to Canada. I can come to Canada, but I come as a sales call. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, there's some nuance, but I can come to Canada. I've looked into it for a couple other folks. But yeah, shoot me an email, Color Gamut Consulting, and we can see if we can work something out. Correct. Yeah. So if you are baking that linearization into the profile, just make sure all of your CMYK values are flat or linear, set back to default, and then just load in the profile the way I just showed you. That'll let you do that. I don't recall the outer dimension. I just believe, if I remember off the top of my head, he went from a 2 millimeter internal dimension to a 3 millimeter internal dimension, which is actually the size of most of the whites. If your machine has different size white ink lines than it does color ink lines, you probably have that smaller dimension internal. And I don't think the external matters that much. The one thing you're going to struggle with, or you're going to have to fight with, is running those new ink lines through that umbilical. The umbilical that runs all your connecting lines and your wires and stuff like that, that kind of that flips the octopus tail or whatever, that flips back and forth, that rides with the carriage. That's a little bit of a pain to feed lines through. I know from personal experience, but you can do it. So, yeah, that was a lot, and a lot of like deep divey stuff today, like a lot of nerd out. The ink manufacturer I was actually working with in Minnesota at that dealer, they invited me to come out and play with their nerds. So hopefully at some point I'll get to go out there and talk to their chemists and actually work with their chemists on some ink colors and like behaviors and stuff like that. Because as I was talking, he was like texting, like the sales guy was like texting their color people, their chemists. And I would say something is like, oh, that's what the chemist just said. So I would love to do a deep dive and get out to their facility. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's a when, not an if that makes sense. So let's see. I think we got all the questions answered today. If I didn't answer your question, let me know. If you have more questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to probably sign off. I've got a few things to do. Yeah, honestly, Carl, it's a good chance it's the film as well. So definitely try the different film, because it's going to be a lot of work to swap out those ink lines. But if you're continually having that starvation problem, that might be a better solution, because then you're not fighting with your prints. Congratulations, Kevin. Email me, because I's already booking up pretty heavy. I've already got basically January's almost completely booked because I have impressions. Y'all going to be at impressions? How many people are going to be at impressions? Because I will be at impressions. I'm going to be at DTF Station's booth the Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday walking the show on my own. So if you're going to be at impressions, you should come see me. Are you saying impressions have been canceled, Kevin? Oh. Nobody listen to Kevin. Kevin doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah. So anyway, you need to email me, bro. Got to get you on the docket along with everybody else that wants me to come out. But impressions, yes. It's going to be a big show. I've seen the layout. DTF Station's up in the arena. So I will be up there Thursday and Friday. They have some pretty freaking cool stuff. Oh, they're also giving away some free stuff. So you should definitely stop by their booth and say hi to me and get something free. But I did have a meeting with them last week, and they have got some really cool new stuff. So they brought some new stuff at Printing United. They're bringing some really, really cool new stuff, like stuff that I'm really excited about that they're bringing. So it's going to be a good show. I'm excited for impressions. So I'll be there. Hope you will be there too. If you are, you got to come say hi. Yeah. And if there's no other questions, I will sign off. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving, whether you're going to spend it with family or doing your own thing, watching some football, having some Chinese takeout because you're not a big fan of the Thanksgiving food stuff. My daughter, not a big fan of Thanksgiving food. So I'm cooking some chicken because she doesn't like turkey, but I like turkey. But whatever you're doing, I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving and kickoff to the holiday season. If you don't know, this is absolutely my favorite time of the year. I love Christmas. I'm going to put up my Christmas lights probably tonight. You know what? I'll probably share them so you guys can see the ridiculousness that is my house. Now, it's tasteful. It's tasteful ridiculousness. At least that's what I'm going with. Anyway, y'all have a great week. I appreciate you. We will be back here on Monday. We're not missing a Monday till January. I think we're good to go for every single Monday for the rest of the year. We're going to be here. Oh, hold on. I missed something. The giveaway. I almost forgot. So got quite a few people signed up for it. If you've signed up for it and you haven't invited other people to sign up for it, you get an extra entry for every single person that signs up from your link. So if you have you can do 20. I think you can do 20 additional people. So if you want to sway your chances of winning this, just go back to that website and it'll recognize that you've already signed up, and then it'll give you the link that you can share with your friends. So if you got any people you know that need color profiling maybe too, but you want to just raise your chances a little bit, go ahead and do that. And then Monday, December 15th on the live stream is when we're going to do the drawing for it. But yeah, so if you haven't signed up already, sign up. And Robin, it will be a discount for going to Canada. So obviously it's not free because it's going to be expensive to go to Canada, but it won't let you from Canada? Probably because you put in your address and recognize it. No, but I had somebody sign up that was not in America. And I have to pull them out of the running because it was South Africa or something like that. Something crazy. I will look at that and then let you know. But in the case of somebody that's in because it's free for the lower 48. But if somebody wins and they're Alaska or Canada, it would just be a $2,500 discount. And if you have multiple machines, if you win and you have 3 or 4 machines and you want me to profile all of them, you just have to pay for the extra machines. That's kind of how I'll run it. But anyway, all right, that's it. I'm actually signing off now. Yeah, I think if you put in I think that person that registered from South Africa or whatever, I think my system just didn't recognize it or whatever. I don't know. Anyway. All right, that's all. I digressed. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.